The space station floated in the darkness between stars. It was old and gray, with metal walls that had seen better days. The lights inside flickered sometimes, and the air always smelled like cleaning chemicals. This was the Galactic Rehabilitation Center on IV, and it was where the galaxy sent its most difficult problems. Most of those problems had fur, scales, or claws. The station housed orphans from across the known systems. Not regular orphans, though. These were the children of predator species. Their home worlds had been destroyed by wars, by disease, by disasters that no one could stop. The children had nowhere else to go. No family wanted them. No planet would take them. So they came here, to this cold station at the edge of known space. Broker ran the station. He was which meant he had 4 arms, blue-gray skin, and eyes that could see in almost complete darkness. He had worked here for 20 years. In that time, he had seen many things. He had seen children learn to trust. He had seen children find new homes. He had also seen children who could not be saved. The cubs fell into that last group. There were 6 of them. They had arrived 2 years ago, pulled from the wreckage of a transport ship. Their home world had been swallowed by its own dying sun. The entire species was nearly gone. These 6 cubs were among the last of their kind. They were also extremely dangerous. Were apex predators. On their home world they had been at the top of the food chain. Nothing hunted them. They hunted everything else. Even as cubs, they stood as tall as a human child's waist. Their bodies were covered in dark scales that could turn aside a knife. Their claws could cut through metal. Their teeth were made for tearing flesh. Their eyes glowed amber in low light, and they could see heat signatures like some species saw colors. They had already killed 3 caretakers. The first one had made the mistake of showing fear. The cubs had smelled it on her skin, heard it in her heartbeat. They had attacked as a pack, working together with perfect coordination. The second caretaker had tried to use force. He had lasted 2 weeks before they overwhelmed him. The third one had tried kindness, bringing them treats and speaking softly. They had seen her gentleness as weakness. Now no one would go near them. Broker watched them through the observation window. The cubs were in their habitat room fighting over a meal tray. The food was raw meat, delivered through a slot in the wall so no one had to enter the room. The biggest cub, the one the files called Unit 1, had claimed the center of the tray. He snapped and growled at any cub who came too close. The others circled, looking for an opening. The smallest cub hung back near the wall. The files called this one Unit 6. It was thin, much thinner than the others. Its ribs showed through its scales. Unit 6 rarely got to eat. By the time the bigger cubs were done fighting, there was usually nothing left. Broker had written the recommendation himself. The cubs would be euthanized at the end of the month. It was not what he wanted, but he saw no other choice. They could not stay here forever. They could not be placed with families. They could not even be moved to a wildlife preserve because they were too intelligent, too dangerous. There was no place for them in the galaxy. Then the human arrived. Her name was. She was 34 years old, with black hair that she kept tied back and calm brown eyes. She was not tall or strong or impressive in any physical way. She came from a colony ship called Promise, which had left Earth generations ago carrying families from a place called Korea. She was a kindergarten teacher. Broker did not understand why the Galactic Council had sent her. He had asked for specialists. He had asked for predator handlers, for behavioral scientists, for military trainers who knew how to work with dangerous species. Instead, they had sent a woman who had spent 15 years teaching small children how to share toys and take naps. "You understand what you are walking into?" Broker asked her. They stood in his office, the observation feeds showing on the wall behind his desk. "Those creatures have killed. They will kill again. They do not understand kindness. They only understand strength and dominance." Watch the feeds. On the screen, the cubs continued to fight. Unit 1 had claimed most of the meat now. The others were left with scraps. Unit 6 had given up entirely and was curled in the corner, trying to sleep instead of eat. "How long since they lost their families?" asked. 2 years. "How old were they when it happened?" "Young, very young. They would have still been nursing." Nodded slowly. "So they were bobbies when they lost everything. They were alone and scared, and no one could comfort them because everyone was afraid of them." "They are predators," Broker said. "Fear is the correct response." Maybe picked up her bag. It was a simple thing made of worn fabric. "But fear has not helped them. It has not helped you. Maybe it is time to try something else." "Something else will get you killed." "Maybe," said again. "But I have worked with children who were afraid. Children who had lost their homes, their families, everything they knew. They bit, they scratched, they screamed and broke things. Everyone said they were too damaged, too dangerous, too far gone." She looked at Broker with those calm brown eyes. "They were wrong." She walked toward the door. "I cannot let you enter that room," Broker called after her. "As station commander, I am ordering you to stay out." Paused at the door. "I understand," she said, "but I am not under your command. The council sent me here to do a job. I am going to do it." She left his office. Broker watched her go, then turned to look at the observation feeds. The cubs had finished their meal. Unit 1 was grooming himself in the center of the room, looking satisfied. The other cubs kept their distance from him. Unit 6 was still curled in the corner, still hungry, still alone. Broker pressed the communication button on his desk. "Security team to Habitat 7. We have a human entering the predator enclosure. Be ready to extract her body." On the feeds, he watched approach the habitat door. She did not hesitate. She did not show fear. She pressed her hand to the access panel and the door slid open. The cubs heard it immediately. 6 heads turned toward the entrance. 6 pairs of amber eyes locked onto the small human woman standing in their doorway. Unit 1 rose to his feet. A low growl rumbled from his chest. Stepped inside. The door closed behind her. She was alone now, alone with 6 predators who had killed before and would kill again. The security team was on the other side of the door, but they could not reach her in time if the cubs attacked. Everyone on the station knew this. Sat down on the floor. She crossed her legs. She placed her bag in her lap. She did not run. She did not fight. She did not try to make herself look big or threatening. She just sat there. The cubs approached her slowly, forming a circle around her. Their growls filled the room. Their claws clicked on the metal floor. They were confused. Prey did not behave this way. Prey ran. Prey fought. Prey died. This human was doing none of those things. Opened her bag and pulled out a thermos. The cubs watched, still growling, as she unscrewed the cap and poured something into a small bowl. Steam rose from the liquid. The room filled with a warm, gentle smell that none of the cubs had ever encountered before. Raised the bowl to her lips. She blew on it gently. And for the first time since they had arrived at this station, the cubs fell silent. The silence lasted only a moment. Then the growling started again, louder than before. Did not react. She sat on the cold metal floor, holding her bowl of soup, and watched the cubs circle her. They moved like hunters, their amber eyes tracking every tiny movement she made. Their claws scraped against the floor with each step. Their scales rippled as muscles tensed beneath them. Unit 1 was the closest. He was the biggest of the 6, nearly as tall as shoulder, even on all fours. His growl was deeper than the others, a sound that vibrated in his chest. He was the leader of this small pack. The others waited to see what he would do. Unit 1 moved closer. His nostrils flared as he sniffed the air. The smell from the bowl confused him. It was warm. It was food, but not the kind of food he knew. There was no blood in it, no raw flesh, just something soft and gentle that rose in wisps of steam. Blew on the soup again. The steam scattered. Unit 1 stopped. His head tilted to one side, then the other. This was not normal prey behavior. Prey screamed. Prey begged. Prey tried to run, and when they could not run, they fought. This human was doing something else entirely. She was making the food cooler. Why would she do that? Took a slow sip from the bowl. The soup was simple. She had made it herself in the station's small kitchen. It was just broth with vegetables and a little rice. Nothing special. But it was warm and it was made with care, and that was what mattered. "It's hot," she said softly. Her voice was calm and even. "You have to wait or you will hurt yourself." The cubs did not understand her words. Their translators had been damaged long ago and no one had bothered to fix them. But they understood her tone. It was not afraid. It was not angry. It was patient. Unit 1 growled again, but there was confusion in the sound now. He did not know what to do with this strange creature. She was not acting like prey, but she was not acting like a predator either. She was something else, something he had never encountered before. Behind him, Unit 6 crept forward. The smallest cub was braver than the others in some ways. Being small meant being ignored. Being ignored meant being able to move without being noticed. Unit 6 slipped between the larger cubs, drawn by the strange, warm smell. Unit 1 noticed. He spun around and snapped at the smaller cub, his teeth clacking together just inches from Unit 6's face. The message was clear: I eat first, you eat never. Unit 6 scrambled backward, pressing itself against the wall. It was shaking now, hungry and scared and too small to fight back. Watched this happen. She watched the way Unit 1 used his size to bully the others. She watched the way Unit 6 gave up before even trying. She watched the other 4 cubs hang back, waiting to see which way the conflict would go. She had seen this before, not with alien cubs but with human children. In every group there were the strong ones and the weak ones, the loud ones and the quiet ones, the bullies and the bullied. The pattern was the same across species, across planets, across the entire galaxy. Finished her sip of soup. Then she set the bowl down on the floor in front of her. Unit 1's attention snapped back to her. Food, on the ground, undefended. Every instinct told him to lunge forward and take it, but something held him back. The human was not running. She was watching him with those strange, flat eyes, eyes that did not glow, that could not see in the dark. Pointed at Unit 6. Unit 1 did not understand the gesture. Pointing meant nothing to the, but kept her hand raised, her finger aimed at the smallest cub. Then she picked up the bowl and stood. The cubs tensed. Standing meant attacking. Standing meant fighting, but did not attack. She walked slowly and carefully across the room toward Unit 6. Unit 1 followed her. The other cubs followed him. They formed a loose pack behind her, growling and snarling but not attacking. They did not understand what was happening. Reached Unit 6. The small cub pressed itself harder against the wall, trying to disappear. Its ribs showed clearly beneath its scales. Its eyes were wide with fear. Knelt down. She placed the bowl on the floor in front of Unit 6. "Eat," she said softly. "It's for you." Unit 6 looked at the bowl. It looked at Unit 1, who was standing just a few feet away, growling with fury. The small cub did not move. Turned to face Unit 1. The big cub was bristling now, every scale raised, every muscle ready to attack. She was giving his food to another cub, to the weakest cub. This was wrong. This was against everything the pack understood. Raised one hand, palm facing Unit 1. "Wait," she said. The word meant nothing, but her voice meant everything. There was no fear in it, no anger, no pleading. There was only calm, absolute certainty. She was not asking Unit 1 to wait. She was telling him. And something in the way she said it, something in the way she held his gaze without flinching, made Unit 1 hesitate. In the way of things, only the strongest could command without violence. Only the absolute leader of a pack could tell others what to do and expect to be obeyed. Unit 1 was the leader here. He had fought for that position. He had bled for it. But this human was not fighting him. She was not trying to take his position. She was simply standing there, hand raised, eyes steady and waiting for him to choose. The moment stretched out. The other cubs stopped growling, watching. The security team watched through the observation window, their weapons ready. Broker watched from his office, his 4 hands clenched into fists. Unit 1's growl slowly faded. He sat down, lowered her hand. She turned back to Unit 6 and gestured toward the bowl. Unit 6 looked at Unit 1. The big cub was not attacking. The big cub was sitting. This had never happened before. In 2 years of fighting for scraps, of going hungry while others ate, Unit 6 had never once been allowed to eat first. The small cub crept forward. Its nose touched the edge of the bowl. The soup was still warm but not hot anymore. The smell was gentle and inviting. Unit 6 began to eat. Sat down beside the small cub, her back against the wall. She watched the other cubs, making sure none of them moved to interfere. But they did not move. They watched Unit 6 eat with confusion and something that might have been curiosity. When the bowl was empty, Unit 6 looked up at. For a moment their eyes met. The cub's amber eyes and the human's brown eyes. 2 species that had never met before. 2 lives that had been shaped by loss and loneliness. Unit 6 made a small sound. It was not a growl. It was not a snarl. It was something softer, something almost like a question. Reached out and touched the cub's head gently. Her fingers brushed against the dark scales. They were smoother than she had expected, warm from the cub's body heat. Unit 6 did not bite her. Across the room, Unit 1 watched. He was still sitting where had told him to wait. He did not understand what had just happened. He did not understand why he had obeyed this strange creature. He did not understand why Unit 6 was not dead. But something had changed. Something small but important. For the first time since arriving at this station, the cubs had experienced something other than violence and hunger. They had experienced waiting. They had experienced sharing. They had experienced a moment of peace. Pulled another thermos from her bag. She had brought enough soup for all of them. One by one she served the cubs. She started with the smallest and weakest, then moved to the next smallest, then the next. Unit 1 was served last. Each time she blew on the soup first. Each time she made them wait until it was cool enough to drink. Each time she watched them with those calm brown eyes that showed no fear. By the time Unit 1 finally received his bowl, something strange had happened inside him. He was not angry anymore. He was not confused anymore. He was just hungry, and there was food, and the human was giving it to him. He ate. Sat in the middle of the room, surrounded by 6 predator cubs, and smiled. It was a small smile, a tired smile. She knew this was only the beginning. She knew there would be hard days ahead, days when the cubs would forget this moment and return to their old ways, days when they would growl and snap and maybe even try to hurt her. But today was not that day. Today, for the first time in 2 years, the cubs had learned something new. They had learned to wait. And that was enough. 3 weeks passed on the station. Every morning at the same time, arrived at the habitat door. Every morning she carried her bag with the thermoses inside. Every morning the cubs were waiting for her. This was new. Before came, the cubs had no routine. They slept when they were tired. They fought when they were bored. They ate when food appeared through the slot in the wall, and they fought over that too. Each day was the same as the day before. There was nothing to look forward to. There was nothing to wait for. Now there was. Entered the habitat and the cubs gathered around her. Not in a threatening circle anymore, but in something closer to a group. They still kept their distance from each other. They still growled sometimes. But they had learned that when arrived, good things followed. She had given them names. Unit 1 was now. The name meant great and brave in the old language of ancestors. She had chosen it because the big cub was brave in his own way. He was learning to use his strength for something other than bullying. He was learning to protect instead of attack. Unit 6 was now. The name meant beautiful and precious, had chosen it because the small cub was precious, even if no one had ever told her that before. In the weeks since that first bowl of soup had changed. She had gained weight. Her scales had grown shinier. She followed everywhere, sleeping outside her quarters at night. The other cubs had names too, and each name meant something. Each name was chosen with care, and slowly the cubs had started to respond to them. Today had a new lesson. She set up a simple game in the middle of the habitat room. There was a box with a lid on it. Inside the box was meat, real meat that the cubs loved. On top of the box was a small timer that would beep after 60 seconds. The rule is simple, said, even though the cubs still could not understand her words. Their translators had finally been fixed, but knew that understanding words and understanding meaning were different things. She would show them what she meant. She pointed at the box. The cubs' eyes locked onto it. They could smell the meat inside. Started forward, tail swishing with excitement. Held up her hand. Wait. Stopped, he looked at her, confused, then looked at the box again. The meat was right there. Why could he not take it? Pressed the button on the timer. It began to count down. 60 seconds appeared on the small screen. For the first 10 seconds, the cubs stood still. They had learned that when said wait, she meant it. But the smell of the meat was strong. Their instincts screamed at them to lunge forward, to tear open the box, to eat. At 30 seconds, started to pace. His claws clicked on the floor. His growl was low and constant. At 40 seconds, began to whine. The sound was almost like a complaint. Why was this taking so long? Why could they not just eat? At 50 seconds, stood up. Watched him carefully. The big cub was the key to everything. If he broke the rule, the others would follow. If he waited, they would wait too. Looked at the box. He looked at the timer. 55 seconds. 58 seconds. The timer beeped. Opened the box and stepped back. The cubs rushed forward, but even in their rush, there was order now. Ate first because she was smallest. Then ate last. This was the rule. This was the way had taught them. The strongest protected the weakest. The biggest waited for the smallest. The pack shared. When the meat was gone, praised them. She touched each cub on the head, her voice warm and gentle. They did not fully understand her words, but they understood her meaning. They had done well. They had waited. They had shared. Broker watched all of this through the observation window. His 4 arms were crossed over his chest. His expression was unreadable. "You are conditioning them," he said when left the habitat that afternoon. "Training them like animals." "I am teaching them," corrected. "There is a difference." "Is there? You give them food when they behave the way you want. You make them wait. You control their every action." Considered this. She understood why Broker saw it that way. From the outside, her methods might look like manipulation, like control, like taking away the cub's freedom. "Let me ask you something," she said. "When you were young, did your parents make you wait for things?" Broker's expression shifted. "That is not the same." "Is it not? Did they make you wait for meals, wait for rewards, wait for treats and toys and things you wanted?" "They were teaching me discipline." "Yes," nodded. "And what is discipline? It is learning that you cannot always have what you want right away. It is learning that sometimes waiting makes things better. It is learning to control yourself instead of letting your desires control you." She looked back at the habitat door. Inside, the cubs were resting together, not in a pile, not yet, but closer than before. Was curled near side. The big cub was letting her stay there. "These cubs never learned discipline," continued. "They never had parents to teach them. They were bobbies when their world died. All they knew was hunger and fear and fighting. No one ever showed them another way." "And you think you can show them?" "I think I can try," smiled, though there was sadness in it. "That is all any of us can do, try." The weeks continued, added new lessons, new games. She brought blocks that stacked on top of each other. The rule was that the cubs could not eat until the tower reached a certain height. They had to work together, using their claws carefully instead of slashing. The first few times, they knocked the tower over and had to start again. But they learned. She brought balls that rolled across the floor. The rule was that the cubs had to wait until she counted to 10 before they could chase them. Some of the cubs had trouble with this. Their predator instincts were strong. The ball was moving. Moving things were prey. Prey should be chased. But was patient. She counted again and again. She praised them when they waited. She gently corrected them when they did not. And slowly they learned. The station staff began to watch the sessions. At first, they watched from a distance, through the observation windows. They expected to see the human woman get hurt. They expected to see the cubs attack her. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time. But time passed, and the attack never came. One day, a young engineer named asked if she could enter the habitat too. Y asked, "I want to help." His 4 hands twisted together nervously. "I have been watching you. What you do with those cubs is amazing. I want to learn." Studied the young engineer. She was young, probably not much older than the cubs in her own species years. Her eyes were bright with curiosity and something else. Hope, maybe. "It is dangerous," warned. "The cubs trust me because I have spent time with them. They do not know you." "I understand. I will do whatever you say." Thought about it. She thought about how tired she was, doing everything alone. She thought about how the cubs needed to learn that other people could be trusted too, not just her. "Come with me tomorrow morning," she said. "But stay behind me. Do not make sudden movements, and if I tell you to leave, you leave immediately." Nodded quickly. "I will, I promise." The next morning, 2 people entered the habitat instead of 1. The cubs reacted with surprise, hid behind his legs, stood in front of the pack, his growl low and warning. But was calm. She spoke to the cubs in her gentle voice. She introduced by name, pointing at her, then touching her own chest. "Friend. Safe. Pack." The cubs did not attack. Over the next few days, more staff asked to join. Not many, but enough. An older doctor who had always loved animals, a security officer who had lost her own children years ago, a maintenance worker who had nothing better to do. Each one was introduced slowly. Each one was taught the rules. Wait, be patient, let the cubs come to you. The pack was growing. And watching the cubs learn to trust more than just her, felt something warm grow in her chest. This was working. Against all odds, against all expectations, this was actually working. She did not know that the hardest test was still to come. The supply ship arrived on a cold morning in the station's 3rd month of stay. It was a routine delivery. Food supplies, medical equipment, spare parts for the aging station systems. Nothing unusual. Except for the live cargo. The creatures were called skitters. They were small and fast, about the size of a human's fist, with 6 legs and soft gray fur. They were raised as food animals on agricultural worlds, bred to be stupid and calm and easy to catch. A research facility on a nearby moon had ordered 50 of them for study. The containment unit carrying the skitters was old and damaged. No one noticed the crack in the side until it was too late. Was in her quarters when the alarm sounded. Red lights flashed in the corridors. A voice announced that there was a containment breach in the cargo bay. Small creatures were loose in the station. She knew immediately what would happen. The cubs ran, her feet pounded on the metal floor. She passed station workers who were trying to catch the escaping skitters. The small creatures were everywhere, running through vents, under doors, between legs. They squeaked with terror. When reached the habitat corridor, she found the door broken open. The cubs had heard the skitters. They had smelled them. Prey, real prey, running prey. Every instinct inside them had awakened at once. 2 years of hunger and waiting had exploded in a single moment. They had torn through the habitat door like it was made of paper. followed the trail of destruction. Claw marks on the walls, dents in the floor. The sounds of howling echoed through the corridors. The cubs were hunting. She found them in the cargo bay. The space was huge, filled with crates and containers and equipment. Skitters ran everywhere, their squeaks filling the air. And in the middle of it all were the cubs. They were magnificent and terrifying. Had pinned a skitter under his claws. His jaws were open, ready to kill. His eyes blazed with amber fire. He looked nothing like the cub who had learned to wait, who had learned to share. He looked like what he was, a predator, a hunter, a killer. The other cubs were scattered through the bay, chasing skitters, cornering them, playing with them before the kill. Their howls were joyful. This was what they were born to do. This was their nature. Security officers surrounded the bay. Their weapons were drawn, saw the grim looks on their faces. She heard the words crackling through their communication devices. If they kill, we have to put them down. Predators who taste blood cannot be rehabilitated. Prepare for lethal response. Broker's voice came through earpiece. He had given her a communicator weeks ago for emergencies. His voice was heavy with something that might have been grief. I am sorry, but if those cubs kill, I have no choice. The regulations are clear. You need to leave that bay. Did not leave. She walked into the cargo bay. The security officers shouted at her to stop. She ignored them. Her eyes were fixed on the cub she had named, had fed, had taught. The cub who was about to become a killer. She said. Her voice was not loud. It should not have carried over the chaos of squeaking skitters and howling cubs, but somehow heard it. His head snapped toward her. His eyes were wild. For a terrible moment did not recognize him. The gentle cub who had learned to wait was gone. In his place was something ancient and hungry, something that saw her not as a teacher but as potential prey. Kept walking. The skitter under's claws was still alive. It trembled with fear. His jaws were still open. All he had to do was bite down. Reached into her bag. Her fingers closed around the thermos she always carried. She pulled it out. She unscrewed the cap. She poured soup into a bowl. Steam rose. His nostrils flared. The smell was familiar. It was warm and gentle and safe. It was the smell of mornings in the habitat, the smell of waiting and sharing and praise. Blew on the soup. The sound was soft in the chaos of the cargo bay. But too, it was the loudest thing in the world. It cut through the hunting instinct. It cut through the hunger. It reached something deeper, something that had been growing inside him for 3 months. Trust. His growl faded. Behind him had stopped chasing skitters. She was watching now, her amber eyes confused but focused. One by one, the other cubs stopped too. They turned away from their prey and looked at the human woman with the bowl of soup. It's hot, said. Her voice was steady, calm, patient. You have to wait. For 10 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. The skitters continued to run and squeak. The security officers kept their weapons raised. The cubs stood frozen, caught between 2 worlds. Then walked toward. The small cub's steps were hesitant at first, then more confident. She reached and sat down beside her. Her tail curled around her feet. Her eyes never left the bowl. She was waiting. One by one, the other cubs followed. Came next, then. They formed a circle around just like that first day. But this time they were not threatening her. They were joining her. Only remained. The big cub stood over his skitter, his claws still pressing down on its small body. The creature's heart beat fast against his pads. It would be so easy to kill it. So natural, so right. Looked at the skitter. He looked at the other cubs sitting peacefully, waiting for their soup. He thought about the old days, the fighting, the hunger, the loneliness. He thought about the new days, the waiting, the sharing, the pack. Slowly lifted his claws. The skitter ran. It disappeared into a vent, squeaking with terror and relief. Walked to and sat down. He lowered his head. The security officers lowered their weapons. Broker's voice came through his earpiece. "How did you do that?" Did not answer. She was too busy serving soup. She started with, then moved to the others, then finally two. Each bowl was blown on carefully. Each cub waited their turn. The skitters were caught eventually. Station workers spent hours rounding them up, sealing them in a new containment unit, sending them on to their destination. No one was hurt. No skitters were killed. That night, Broker came to his quarters. "I do not understand," he said. His 4 hands hung at his sides. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "Those cubs should have killed. Everything in their nature said they should kill. How did you stop them?" Thought about the question. She thought about that moment in the cargo bay when his eyes had been wild and hungry. She thought about how close everything had come to ending. "I did not stop them," she said finally. "They stopped themselves. Because of the soup." "Because of what the soup means," smiled softly. "For 3 months I have been teaching them that waiting leads to good things, that the pack shares, that being strong means more than just taking what you want. They did not forget that, even when their instincts were screaming at them to hunt." She looked at the window, at the stars beyond. "Humans have instincts too. We can be violent, we can be cruel, we can give in to our worst impulses, but we do not have to. We can choose to be better. We can choose to wait." "And you taught them that." "I showed them it was possible. They taught themselves." Turned back to Broker. "That is what teaching is, not forcing someone to change, showing them that change is possible and letting them choose for themselves." Broker was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer. "The council has been asking about the cubs. Other facilities want to study what you are doing. They think your methods might work with other predator species." "And what do you think?" Broker looked at her with his dark eyes. "I think the galaxy has underestimated humans for a very long time." Smiled, maybe. Or maybe the galaxy has just forgotten what patience can do. She picked up her thermos. Tomorrow would be another day, another lesson, another step forward. The cubs were waiting for her. 1 year had passed since first walked into the habitat on IV. 1 year since she had sat down on that cold metal floor and poured her first bowl of soup. 1 year since everything had changed. The Galactic Rehabilitation Center was famous now. Ships came from across the known systems, carrying diplomats and scientists and journalists who all wanted to see the same thing. The cubs, the predators who had learned to wait, found the attention exhausting. She stood in the observation room, watching through the window as a group of researchers from the core world studied the cubs. The researchers kept their distance, taking notes on their devices, speaking in quiet voices. They treated the cubs like specimens, like puzzles to be solved. The cubs ignored them. Was lying in the center of the habitat, his great body relaxed, was curled against his side, sleeping peacefully. The other cubs were scattered around the room, resting or playing with the toys had brought them. They looked nothing like the terrified, violent creatures who had arrived at this station 3 years ago. They looked like a family. "You have done something remarkable," said the lead researcher, a thin human man with gray hair and sharp eyes. His name was Dr. Park. He had traveled all the way from Earth to study methods. "The scientific community is calling it the patience protocol. Papers are being written. Theories are being developed." "Is that so?" Voice was flat. She did not care about papers or theories. "Your techniques could revolutionize how we handle predator rehabilitation across the galaxy. The implications are enormous." Dr. Park paused, looking at her with curiosity. "But you do not seem excited by this." "I am excited that the cubs are healthy and happy. I am excited that they have a future now." Turned away from the window. "I am not excited about being studied like I am some kind of experiment." Dr. Park nodded slowly. "I understand, but surely you must be curious about why your methods worked, the neuroscience behind it, the behavioral conditioning. I know why it worked. Looked at him with her calm brown eyes. It worked because I treated them like children instead of monsters. It worked because I was patient when everyone else was afraid. It worked because I loved them when no one else would. She left the observation room. The corridor outside was quiet. Most of the station staff were busy with the visitors, showing them around, answering their questions. Preferred the quiet. She had never been good with crowds or attention. A soft clicking sound made her stop. She turned to find standing in the corridor behind her. The small cub had grown in the past year. She was no longer the skinny, frightened creature who had cowered in corners. Her scales were dark and gleaming. Her eyes were bright and alert. She was still the smallest of the six, but she was healthy now, strong. Pressed her head against his leg. The gesture was gentle, almost like a cat seeking affection. "You followed me again," said softly, kneeling down to meet the cub's eyes. "You are supposed to stay in the habitat when visitors are here." Made a small sound. It was not quite a purr, not quite a growl. It was something in between, something that meant safe, something that meant home. Smiled and stroked the cub's head. "I know, I missed you too." 3 months later, the first placement happened, and were chosen for a search and rescue team on a disaster relief ship. The team specialized in finding survivors in collapsed buildings and crashed ships. They needed creatures with sharp senses and strong bodies. They needed predators who could be trusted. Supervised their training herself. She taught them to follow commands from their new handlers. She taught them to use their hunting instincts to find people instead of prey. She taught them that the pack was growing, that these new people were part of it now. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. On the day they left, stood in the docking bay and watched the transport ship prepare for departure, and were already on board, settled in their special quarters. Their new handlers were kind people who had spent weeks learning methods. "They will be good," Broker said, standing beside her. "You have prepared them well." "I know." His voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. "I just wish I could go with them." "You could. The team offered you a position." "I know that too." Watched the ship's lights flicker as it powered up. "But there are other cubs who need me, here and on other stations. What I learned with and I need to teach others." The transport ship lifted off. Through the bay windows, watched it grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared into the darkness between stars. She thought about the big cub who had learned to be gentle. She thought about the small cub who had learned to be brave. She would probably never see them again. But that was okay. They did not need her anymore. They had learned everything she could teach them. Now it was time for them to live their own lives. The remaining cubs were placed over the following months. Went to a family on a farming world who needed help protecting their livestock from wild predators. Joined a security team on a space station that dealt with dangerous cargo. Was adopted by an elderly couple who had lost their own children and wanted someone to care for. Went to a research facility where he helped scientists study predator behavior in humane ways. Each placement was carefully chosen. Each new family was trained in the patient's protocol. Each cub left with his blessing and her tears. By the end of the year, the habitat on IV was empty. Stood in the room where she had first met the cubs. The walls still had claw marks from the old days. The floor still had dents from their fights, but the room felt different now. Not empty, peaceful. Broker found her there. "The council has made a decision," he said. "They want to expand your program to other stations, other species, other predators who were thought to be beyond help. I heard. They are offering you a position as Director of Predator Rehabilitation for the entire sector." Broker paused. "It is a great honor." Laughed softly. The sound echoed in the empty room. "A year ago you told me that kindness would get me killed. You said the cubs only understood dominance." "I was wrong." Broker's voice was humble, for admitting error was not easy. "I have been wrong about many things." You are not wrong about everything. Kindness alone is not enough. Patience alone is not enough. You also need strength. Not the strength to fight, but the strength to keep going when everything seems hopeless. The strength to try again when you fail. Turn to face him. Humans are not special because we are kind. Many species are kind. We are not special because we are patient. Many species are patient. We are special because we do not give up. We keep trying even when everyone else says it is impossible. A message arrived on his device. She looked at it and smiled. It was a picture of End. They were on some distant planet, standing in the rubble of a collapsed building. Between them, looking scared but alive, was a small alien child they had just rescued. The message was from their handler. It said, "They found her when everyone else had given up. They never stopped searching, not for a moment." Showed the picture to Broker. They looked at it for a long time. "The galaxy thinks humans are soft," he said finally. "Weak, easy prey." "Maybe we are," said. "No," Broker shook his head, all four hands crossing over his chest. "You are something much more dangerous. You make others want to follow you, not through fear, through patience, through kindness, through never giving up." He looked at with something that might have been respect. The predators of this galaxy hunt, the humans teach, and that is far more powerful than any weapon. Accepted the position. Over the next 10 years, she traveled from station to station, world to world, teaching others what she had learned. She trained handlers in the patience protocol. She saved species that had been marked for extinction. She built a network of rehabilitated predators who became protectors instead of killers. She never forgot her first cubs. She kept pictures of them in her quarters. She followed their stories through the years, became famous for his rescue work, became a mother herself, raising her own cubs with the lessons had taught her. On quiet nights, when the stars wheeled slowly past her window, would pour herself a bowl of soup. She would blow on it gently, watching the steam scatter. And she would think about that first day on IV, when a frightened human woman had sat down in a room full of predators and done the only thing she knew how to do. She had waited. And in waiting, she had changed the galaxy. The end.